Sounds good.
All right, everybody, welcome to this week's edition of Leadmore Live with my friend here, Nick Seguin. How are you, Nick?
I'm well. I'm well. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Calling in, are you still in Chicago?
I am in Chicago. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, for those in the chat for listening today, Nick, I always think of you as someone who's like kind of touched every part around entrepreneurship. You've been a product guy. You first started your own agency. You've worked at product companies, but you've also worked as like a supporter of entrepreneurs. Kaufman, Startup Weekend, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So you've touched the whole gamut around business and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I kind of have backed my way into every experience I've had in my career and didn't know it had anything to do with entrepreneurship until probably like my mid 20s. And so,
Sure.
yeah, I'm a huge advocate of the act of entrepreneurship and the people who are crazy and brave enough to do it.
That's great. And so tell us, that's a great segue. Tell us about I don't know the story, how you landed at Rise, and then tell us what Rise does too.
Yeah, how I landed at Rise. In 2015, I actually left the agency where I was a partner and had been since I was like 18 years old. We built it from like three of us and joined a fast growing healthcare IT startup based in Columbus, Ohio. And really a reason that I did that was I had built something kind of from like 0 to 1. But we were small, we were a services business, and I was really interested in understanding what does growth look like and what are the challenges of growth, like what don't I know, like, and there's a lot that I don't know. And so I joined Cover My Meds based in Columbus. I joined at about 150, 180 people. And over the next 2 years, we grew to, I think, 700 by the
Oh,
time I left, and went through an acquisition. And wow, it was like an MBA. A lot of learning, spent time in product, spent time in the people side. It was great. And I think like two big things happened to me, which got me to Rise. And I'll just be short on this. It's
yeah.
The first was I watched what scale looked like and realized it was a great kind of like learning experience. I realized like I am an early stage person. As you scale, you begin to specialize. You need people who are specialized and are experts. Um, Miha Baldwin has this great post on dark matter and how all startups need dark matter. So I'm kind of a generalist and realized I
Yeah.
need to be back in that early stage, back in ambiguity. So I knew I was going to be looking for something early stage. The other thing that happened to me when I was at Cover My Meds was I kind of hit a wall. And it wasn't the typical like startup burnout or anything like that. I was coming to work and even just like going through my daily life, and I was like, this is not the human I am. Like, I'm not productive, I can't stay focused, my emotions are all over the place, I'm not being a good team leader. I couldn't figure it out. I was like self-diagnosing, I had other like symptoms and issues, and I figured out that I had a clinical sleep issue. And that was the first time in my life I had slept well all my life, I had been an athlete, whatever. It was the first time in my life that I connected sleep to performance at work, but literally how I lived every single day, and got fascinated in it, went down a rabbit hole. And so as I was looking for an early stage startup,
No way.
I knew that sleep was important to me, and kind of, the fates bring things together, and my network connected me to Rise. And that's how I got here today.
Interesting. I would have yeah, I thought maybe the job created the passion, but you actually kind of had the passion first, which led you to the
Yeah,
job.
totally my own issue to scratch, and somebody else had already kind of like done the legwork to get it going, and I think we're doing it right, and it was something that I believe in. So yeah,
Cool. So I don't know if all of the attendees are guests, and even I just know loosely. Just give us the elevator pitch of Rise.
yeah. At Rise, our mission is to make healthy sleep a standard. What we know is sleep is the foundation of all human performance. And most people in the world aren't getting enough sleep. And that's leading to degradation in quality of life, shorter lives, loss of productivity. We're just not living the lives. We're not living at our ceiling. And they manifest in a bunch of different ways. So what Rise does is we help you improve your sleep and take advantage of your days.
And is that currently through a mobile app, or what's the product that
Yeah,
education takes shape?
Yeah, so it's implemented through a mobile app. It's an app-based program. We bring together sleep science and behavior science, and we really key on the two levers of sleep that science has kind of said over the last 100 years, because that's how big the body of research is, that really, if you move the needle on either of these two things, you're going to improve your sleep. So that's what we do. We focus on, we deliver it through a mobile app, and help thousands and thousands of people improve their sleep.
Cool. That's great. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to dig into this too for the Leadmore audience here, the guests and those who are watching the recording. One of my favorite things about this is I get to learn about the content I want to learn about too, and then bring it to everybody else. And so you and I DM'd on Twitter, and Leadmore is all about inspiring and helping create more leaders for the future. I think our world needs more leaders, and also that leaders come in all different shapes and sizes, right? So you both at a startup and at a large company, large startup, are a leader, whether you start the company or you join the team. And as we know, leaders need to optimize. I think this is more of a trend of the last decade or so, is that optimizing, physical, mental, all these other factors that we can really, thinking of ourselves as like athletes, which I think is what your website says, right? And leaders have a lot of responsibilities, so they need to be at the top of their game. So I'm excited to dive into that topic. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll take questions at the end, but of course you can put them in the chat. Let's see, we got Gary, Jackie, Nick, Ryan, Stacy. Feel free to leave comments if you have questions. Let's start out. I read the article that we kind of started this conversation, and one of the first things that jumped off the page to me was that 42% of leaders get 6 or fewer hours of sleep a night. And I know that this idea of like this pride in like the hustle, right? That like, I don't need sleep. I can operate on 5 hours of sleep or and it shows that even 6 is not enough. But I thought 42% seemed high. A lot of people are not getting much sleep.
Well, and actually, I bet that's low because, and that's 6 hours. So the way to think, the level set on sleep is everybody has a unique sleep need. So like everybody on this call has a different genetically determined sleep need. It's like your hair color or your height. Like there's nothing you can do about it. It is what it is.
Predetermined. Okay.
Yeah, predetermined. In fact, you kind of make your way towards it when you're born. You have a very high sleep need. Babies sleep, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but it's like, like 18 to 20 hours a day, something like that. And then as we progress to a little bit different between males and females, but basically the age of like 19 to 21 or so, your sleep need becomes basically set for the rest of your life. And again, it's genetically determined. The average in the population is about 8 hours, 10 minutes, 8 hours, 15 minutes with a 35-minute standard deviation on either side. So what that means is most of us need between 7.5 and 8.5 hours of sleep. So this whole idea of like 8 hours of sleep and that's what it is, like that's total bunk. It's uniquely determined between us. And so that's one thing. And the other thing is that this study, I'm not going to be able to cite it off the top of my head, but I can follow up for anybody who wants it. Actually, 70% of American adults report not getting enough sleep. So my bet is that this number is actually low, and but it's especially important for leaders to be getting enough sleep and role model that as well. And I'm not going to give it away. I'll let you ask the questions to get there. But I mean, it's great that there's awareness around that. I bet some people are hedging and they're not actually being forthcoming about the sleep they're getting. But most people don't even know that they have a sleep need that they should be getting every night. That's just not common knowledge, and it's something that we need to bring to the forefront.
Okay, cool. This is great. I'm already nerding out about this. So one thing I'm thinking about is, we hear about diet, and then we hear about exercise, and now we're talking about sleep. Now, maybe you're biased, but like, which one do you think has the greatest impact into our
sleep? Sleep,
for
hands
sure.
down. 100% hands down. And here's the way to think about it. Now I'm not trivializing diet or exercise. Like I biked this morning. Lindsay, my wife, and I are doing intermittent fasting. We're watching what we eat and when we eat and all that kind of stuff. It's totally important, but we will throw those out the window to optimize for sleep. And so here's a little test to think about it. If I were to take, a healthy human adult, like let's say they're like 25 years old, and restrict their sleep to 4 or 5 hours. Again, I'm not going to be able to cite these off the top of my head, but I can follow up for a week. And we were to do a blood test at the end of the week. A doctor would look at the results and expect you to be basically type 2 diabetic. In other words, you could be healthy at the beginning of that week, and sleep restriction will actually put you in a position where your body can't take advantage of the food that you're putting into it. It won't metabolize it the same way. Now, if I fed you flaming hot Cheetos for a week, like that's not going to be like, there's nothing good about that. But I would argue that you're not going to see the same kind of physical impact. And I can talk to you about the cognitive impacts, the emotional impacts, the physical impacts. But what we've learned is that sleep is foundational to even the outcomes of diet and the outcomes of nutrition. So it's actually the foundation, whereas the others are built on top of that.
Yeah. Because I think the quote I pulled from the article was, people who slept just 6 hours per night for 2 weeks function as poorly as if they had gone without sleep for 48 hours for 2 straight days. So it's
That's
even
right.
just this small amount, but day after day, really the downside adds up quickly.
Yeah, and I won't go down a rabbit hole here, but and this is for another, another time or a follow-up if anybody wants it, but that sleep need that I was talking about, whenever you don't get your sleep need, you build up sleep debt. And that debt builds up over time. So if I restrict you over time, you're actually carrying debt, and it accrues just like you would any other kind of debt. And that's predictive of how you're going to perform cognitively, physically, mentally, metabolically. And so it's not surprising where a little bit over time, over those 2 weeks, is the same as just going fully without it for 2 full days. The science works out, but it's, again, not the way that we're all kind of wired to think these days.
It explains so much from, 2 little girls, like there's this kind of fogginess when you first have a new baby because you don't get much sleep, right? And like, it was tough to operate as an entrepreneur, as a father, a friend, like in all these different roles just because of sleep or lack thereof. Okay, so you talked about we understand how important it is. We talked in this article specifically around leadership, and I actually don't want to steal your thunder either. So tell me some of the reasons. I mean, it's pretty obvious about just kind of functioning and focus, but specifically leaders, why sleep they need to optimize, because they're usually busy people, and so when we're busy, the one place we try to create more time is reducing our sleep, right? Staying up late, getting
Yeah.
up early, but
Yeah.
it's almost like
And
it's going to cause more damage.
yeah, and so it's funny on that point alone. It's actually counterintuitive. As you deprive your sleep, so as you load on sleep deprivation, your ability to focus, your ability to block out distractions, your ability to stay vigilant actually is degraded. And what that means is it takes you longer to do tasks. You're going to do rework things. Something that might take you an hour might take 3. And so even though you're saying, "Hey, I'm going to put off sleep because I'm going to get more done," the reality is you're not actually achieving that outcome that you're looking for. And there's a lot of studies around productivity and sleep actually. So, but from a leadership perspective, when you reached out and that was the topic, which again, I love, I did a little bit of thinking, and none of this is my language. It comes from like coaches that I've worked with. Right. And when you think about developing leadership, I think there's a couple different ways that people think about it. It's like, okay, experience, right? So I'm getting reps. It might not be in title, but it might be in behavior. It might be in experience, but just reps about leading people. So there's probably experience, there's probably training and coaching, right? And so all those things happen, but what you should think about is that your leadership ability ebbs and flows. Said another way, the best leaders out there, the people who have had incredible mentors, they're producing results and everything, like literally their quality of leadership ebbs and flows with sleep. And the way that I think about leadership is number one job of a leader is to produce other leaders. And you're not going to do that. You're not even going to have the ability to do that unless they believe you, unless they are following you. So you're not a leader unless someone follows you. And they're not going to follow you unless you take care of 2 things. You're believable and what's in it for them. And so if I'm thinking about that framework, like if I want to lead people, whether it's my title in my job, or I decide that behaviorally within a group, within an organization, I'm going to take a leadership role, nobody's going to follow me unless I articulate what's in it for them. And then I make it believable, right? And because if it's not believable, then I'm just blowing smoke. And so I wondered, what are the things that go into those 2 components? I think the what's in it for them is really thinking big picture, right? So it's problem solving. It's the ability to see the forest through the trees. It's the ability to, and folks can go and look at the article. I'm not making all this up off the top of my head where we've kind of articulated it there, but
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, it's the ability to kind of like bring in different perspectives, decision make in an ethical way, because you're always being observed. So that's the what's in it for them. And then believability. The believability side of it is, do I say what I was going to do? Like, am I actually, can I execute? Do I have the capacity to execute today? And then I think the other component of that is you know, is it do what I say, not what I do? and how do I treat you so that you believe that this is the right way to do things, that we can accomplish things through that framework. So that's just high level how I think about leadership. And then there's a lot, again, that we can dig into any aspect of that about
When you're talking
from sleep
about,
and how you're.
yeah, like modeling, right? If you're sending emails to your team at 1 a.m., 12:30, that's probably showing that you're not getting enough sleep. And then does that make them feel like they should be staying up later, grinding? You know, that's where the hustle is really kind of, that's been a tough narrative that a lot of entrepreneurs preach.
Yeah, and there's like, there's the two sides to that. And I think, especially over the last, I don't know how many decades, there's this mentality of hustle and you got to work hard. Maybe some industries that's, I have a brother-in-law who's a corporate M&A lawyer, like literally, like lives under his desk. And that's just like the way that they think. And we've all known, like, if I send an email at 2 a.m, like, what is that message, right? Well, there's some academics who actually studied this, and they've studied and they've seen, like, when you role model something like that, your team will take that on. So if your team is building up sleep debt because they think you're up and they need to be working, all of a sudden their performance degrades and your whole team's performance degrades only because you're not being thoughtful about, what am I messaging? How am I doing that, right? And the other one is just the devaluation of sleep is contagious. And they've surveyed teams and they understand when my manager does that or when you as a leader do that, it's contagious. And you can go and get answers from folks and they're saying, yeah, it's not that important, or I'm expected to be awake at certain times as well.
Yeah, that's slippery slope. Let's take questions for Nick in the group. Ryan, I saw you mentioned in the research you've done about having the same effects as driving under the influence. And I saw that in the article, it even said that something about 11%. Let's see, the losing one night of sleep leads to 11% increase in response times.
Yeah.
The equivalent of being legally drunk.
There's some fascinating studies that basically they take groups of people and they dose them with the amount of sleep, different amounts of sleep. So like 3 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours, 9 hours a night. And very quickly, even the 7-hour people, because remember I said the average in the population is 8-hour need, right? The 7-hour folks, by probably like day 3, 5, definitely by day 7 of that experiment, they're performing as if they were drunk on reaction time tests. So this is, and in fact, like drowsy driving, it leads to mental lapses and what we call micro sleeps. And those cause more accidents than drunk driving do actually on American roads.
Whoa, yikes. Nick asked one that I was curious about too, because my wife will say this on a day that, if the one time that my kids are staying at my parents or something, like, we need to sleep in, we need to catch up on our sleep. So you talked about that sleep debt. How do you repay the debt? Can you even repay the debt?
Yeah, and so there's been a lot of articles over the last couple of years. I think Time ran a couple really, articles that got a lot of eyeballs. They kind of said you can never repay the debt. And if you think about it, if you think about these in strict terms, like if I have a sleep need that I need every night and I don't get it, no, I can't repay that, right? Like
you can't create more time. Yeah.
But if you think about it in a functional way, what you're really thinking about is if sleep debt is predictive of how I perform in every aspect of my life, then I want to perform better tomorrow. And what the science shows, what the research shows is you can pay it back. So like full disclosure, I'm in a bad spot with my sleep debt today. I woke up at 5. I was probably nervous and thinking about this interview tonight. So I actually added like 2 hours of sleep debt last night. And by the way, I don't do that in my head. Rise actually tracks that. We use biomathematical models and we can kind of predict that. So as your sleep debt, you want to pay down your sleep debt. The way to do it is you want to kind of arrive at your sleep need, and you want to figure out, okay, like if I'm falling behind, if I'm accruing debt, can I invest a little bit more? So go to bed 30 minutes later, right? Or 30 minutes earlier, sorry.
Earlier,
for me, a big strategy for me is I sleep with a sleep mask, and I will keep our AC going at night so that it doesn't start warming up. So I stay cold, and I can actually squeeze another half hour of sleep in the morning if I'm blocking out light and keeping things cold, even though my circadian rhythm is pretty strong. So that's one aspect of it. You basically have to work on it. It's not a one-to-one. So if you built up an hour tonight, you can't pay off an hour tonight. Last night, you can't pay off an hour tonight. It's a weighted, basically, way of thinking about it. So the last 14 days contribute to your sleep debt, and they're all weighted differently, with last night having stronger weight than 14 days ago. On the weekends, here's the big thing. Have you ever have you ever like come into Monday, woken up Monday and just been wrecked? Like you're groggy, you can't get things
Yeah.
going. So what you're probably experiencing is something called social jet lag. And we all experience, it's the same thing as traveling across time zones, but
Yeah.
our bodies are very sensitive to rhythms and changes in those rhythms. So let's say that you typically go to bed at 10 and wake up at 6. Let's say you stay up later Friday and Saturday night, maybe to midnight, and you sleep in even just 2 hours. Your body by Monday morning is expecting that we're sleeping in. And so it's actually still in like full biological night or the beginning of your grogginess zone. And that can throw you off for the entire day or even a second day as well. And so the best way to make up sleep debt or pay it down on a weekend is try to wake up at the same times you normally do and grab a nap instead. Because the way that does is it keeps your body in rhythm and allows you to pay down that debt.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to make sure we get to some of the best practices. And I know some of these because I've heard about sleep mask. I've heard about cool rooms, cool temperatures. What are similar, going to bed at the same time, any food, screens? Just walk us through the best practices.
Yeah. So here, if I were trying to improve my sleep, the good news in most people who aren't getting enough sleep can counteract that through behavioral and environmental changes. So there are portions of our populations who have clinical sleep issues. I have one as well. And so you want to get those checked out with a health professional, but most of us it's behavioral and most of it's environmental. So the keys are cool, dark, and quiet. In fact, the recommendation is to sleep anywhere between like 62 and 67 degrees, which sounds cold. And I'm not going to go into the details now, but that actually is a trigger for the body, and our core temp drops overnight. And so it shows that, or it helps to promote that. So dark, the rule of thumb is if you can tell the sun comes up in the morning, you've got your blinds down and stuff, you can tell it comes up, it's too dark or it's too light. And so invest in blackout shades, sleep mask. I can send a link to everybody or send you a link. There's like a $10 one that's fantastic. And the other thing is remove lights from your bedroom. So power lights on TVs, things like that. And then quiet. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but some people, they have noise from their partner. Sometimes you can't control it, but those are the three things. And then from a behavioral standpoint, you're exactly right. Routine is key. So making sure you're trying to nail the same time every night. And you can't just say, hey, I'm living life and now I'm getting in bed, I'm going to fall asleep. The wind down period is real. And so you should kind of think about sloping that. So at the same time, every night, make sure you've got your household chores done, your last pieces of work finished up, and then begin to move into things that bring you joy. So that might be watching something with a partner or kids. It might be listening to music or reading, but kind of slope down as a wind down because your body will take those cues and actually move into that. And then screens, you know what, blue light suppresses melatonin. We know that to be true. And so to the extent that you block out blue light, you can do that by dimming lights in your house, but your screens are still going to be emitting it. My wife and I walk around with these crazy orange glasses on every night.
I've seen those. Yeah.
So what it's doing is it's blocking the blue light. We still watch Netflix, we do work, we're finishing things up, but it's allowing our brains to naturally secrete melatonin, which doesn't actually make you fall asleep, but it is a signal to the body that sleep is imminent. And so what we do is we're making sure that nothing is counteracting that so that when we actually, turn out the lights and go to bed, our brains are ready to go to sleep, as opposed to beginning that process when you turn out the lights and now your brain has to begin secreting melatonin and go through its process.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's good stuff. Let's take a couple more if we can. Let's see. You mentioned naps. Sometimes after a nap, I feel worse, headache, even more tired. Can it be detrimental?
It can be
the
detrimental.
Circadian rhythms, right?
Well, it can be detrimental in that if you take it too close to your natural bedtime at night or your natural melatonin window in the evening, what it's going to do is it's going to actually decrease the sleep pressure and it'll make it harder to fall asleep in the evening. So one of the big things to think about with naps is timing. But the other thing is there's a right amount of time for a nap. So definitely on circadian rhythm, the easiest time to take a nap, and we haven't really covered circadian rhythm, is in your biological dip during the day. So the food coma time is actually a biological time when every cell in your body is being told to be at rest. You're not going to be as productive, and we can talk about that more, but that's the best time to take a nap. And you should really focus on power naps. And this has been studied by like NASA and the Air Force and things like that. But 15 to 20 minutes or about 60 to 120 minutes. When you kind of clip it in the middle, what you're doing is you're actually waking up in the middle of a sleep cycle, and you can definitely feel groggy. There may be some other reasons for that as well, but that's the most common.
Okay. And so I wanted to make sure we get to that too, because and definitely do not feel bad, because this is only like our 5th Leadmore call, and all we know so far is that we do them on Wednesdays and usually in the afternoon. We haven't locked in a time yet, and we're still figuring that out. But I think it's cool to talk about, because I emailed Nick and he said, well, hey, I can do it either between this window and this window. And you weren't like, I'm busy. You're like, this is when I'm most effective. This is when I'm my optimal circadian rhythm. So tell us, because you clearly have learned what your own is. And I'm curious,
so
then I'm curious too, does Rise have like, do employees at Rise have these blocked calendars where they're like, this is my window?
Yeah, we absolutely do. When we try to adhere to them when we can. Like my CEO today was like, hey, I'm going on a dip run, because he knew that he wasn't going to be productive. He was really feeling it, like lethargic and not zoned in. So he chose to go for a run during that time, because that was the best time to do it. The high level on circadian rhythm is like we all have, it's the same biological clock is another way to think about it, but we all have a rhythm across 24 hours or approximately 24 hours. Some are more, some are less, but we basically have a peak in energy in the morning, a dip in energy in midday, a second peak in energy in late afternoon, early evening, and then we dip into our biological night. And that waveform happens the same for everybody, every day of our lives. It's impacted most by when and how much we're sleeping and when we're being exposed to light. So light is the strongest influence on our circadian rhythm. You've probably heard of night owl and early bird. Those are real things. And basically what that is that takes those two, that dip, peak, dip, and it shifts it on the clock. So early birds, like that happens early and they want to go to bed early. Night owls, different, right? So the way that we do it at Rise is we take your sleep data, and with that, we use models developed by the Department of Defense, and we can actually predict when your circadian is going to happen every day. And what that means is, or what it looks like. So I know when my energy peaks are going to be. I just got off the phone with an SVP of a Fortune 10 company, because we sell to sales teams who are trying to optimize their sellers. And I timed it right during my peak. And this is actually capturing part of my peak as well. So even though I didn't get a ton of sleep last night, I have a ton of energy. I hope I sound like I have a ton of energy. And so the way to think about it is your days impact your night. Remember I said you have that second peak and then that dip into your biological night. You have a melatonin window, which is the optimal time to go to bed. If you can learn that about yourself, you can basically listen to your body. It's easier to fall asleep. You get more sleep. And then that impacts who you are the next day, your energy, your focus, your leadership, everything like that. And then if you can listen to your body during the day, you get better sleep. And so this virtuous cycle, and that's what Rise is really about. It's like, how do we knock down barriers to sleep? Because we know that it impacts the humans that we are, our ability to be inspirational, to be charismatic, to solve problems. All those things are important to leadership. And if we can then give you some instruction to say, and these are the times that are best. Well, if I'm going to hold an all hands and I have to deliver really tough time, we're working with Salesforce right now. And what they love is knowing, hey, when should I schedule really tough conversations with my direct reports, right? Can we tell each other what our sleep debt is so we know who the other human is and when we should be doing this based on our energy? So that's how to think about how to apply this to your life and your work, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking that the whole time about scheduling your day, right? Like maybe one-on-one meetings, like make sure you're in peak. Whereas like email, maybe you can do that during the dip or things like that.
You got it. The way to think about it is don't schedule, don't manage your time, manage your energy. And if you can think differently, and we don't have that ability every day, right? Somebody might put a meeting on our calendar, right?
Yeah.
That's the only time I can talk to a customer. It's the only time someone internally can talk to me. But to the extent that you can, listen to your body, understand when you're going to be at your very best and take advantage of that. So yeah, again, manage your energy, not your time.
Cool. We have a couple minutes left. So if you have a question, put it in the chat to the group here for Nick. When you were describing what Rise does, it made me think of, I can't remember the name of it, but that Bradley Cooper movie where he like, does he take like a pill or something like that, and then he has this like super natural. I mean, that's kind of what you're trying to like optimize salespeople, right? So that they're like as good as they can be.
Yeah,
Limitless.
yeah. And
There it is.
you mentioned this. There you go. There you go, Ryan. You mentioned this earlier. So we actually got our start. Our founders were studying sleep science, and they figured out that they could actually help with behavior science. They could actually improve the amount of sleep that people got every night. Like that was a big unlock. They could use a simple message at the right time based on that individual, improve the amount of sleep. And then we built a business in athletics because athletes have, and this translates to leadership as well, right? If you have everything at your disposal, right? You're making investments in the right tools, the right training, whatever you're doing. If you're not coming to work every day, you're not coming to your day every day, well slept, you can't take advantage of those investments, and neither can your team. And so in athletics, we helped athletes improve their sleep, and we saw points per minute efficiency improve. We saw NFL game grade improve, all those kinds of things. And so then that's where we translated into B2B, where we're like, hey, who are the athletes of the corporate world? Well, probably salespeople. And because it's very, very measurable and repeatable performance events. And so we've been able to be really rigorous about when individuals improve their sleep, we see real world outcomes change. And that's what we're really after.
Yeah, that drives revenue, and that's, for sure.
I do see one more question that I think we skipped real quick. I want to just say
come back
high
to
level.
the app, right?
How do you determine our individual sleep need? Does Rise app help with that? Yes, we do. That's the short answer. But if you wanted to do it without the app, here's the way to think about it. We talk about free days or free nights. And what that is when you can get to bed when you want to and don't need to wake up for anything. If you can do that a couple days in a row, because most of us are carrying sleep debt. So some people experiment with this on vacation or a staycation or something like that. But what you do is you want to get through probably like 3 or 4 days of that. So again, no constraints on when you go to bed and when you wake up. And when you kind of level out on the amount of sleep that you're getting, your duration, that's pretty indicative of like what your individual sleep need is.
You can't change it, huh? You can't really try to over-engineer that.
Yeah, and there's some companies out there and some physicians that say, hey, if you're an athlete and you exert a ton of strain during the day, your sleep need's going to go up tonight. Or there's some thinking around, well, older folks, as you age in the last half of your life or last quarter of your life, you're not sleeping as much, so sleep need must not be as high. Both of those things have been proven to be untrue. You might strain your body more, but it doesn't change your sleep need. And then as you get older, other things actually get in the way of sleep. But again, your sleep need maintains.
I love this. I think one of the things I've learned as I've studied or just spent time around people who I think are super productive and really successful people, I've learned that I think we always think it's a new strategy or a new marketing campaign or a new, we need the ideas, right? Something new. And investing in yourself, investing in these little kind of on the margins can actually make such greater impact.
I think
like sleep.
I mean, if Lemony somehow isn't successful, you can come be a salesperson for us. I mean, like that's the idea, right? It's kind of like what's old is new, and the reality is, I'll say two things here. Is one is the phone call I was just on with that sales leader, but something I was thinking about before going into this is a controversial statement. A big claim I'll make is focusing on your sleep is the biggest and most impactful lever you have in your control to be a better leader. And by that, I mean, taking advantage of the coaching and the experiences and the training and things like that are at your disposal. But even the ability to basically internalize that. So to process that as a memory, to recall that in the next situation that you're in when you learn all of this is impacted by sleep. And then the ability to be charismatic, inspirational, the ability to make good decisions. Every one of those are impacted by sleep. So it's within your control. You don't have to wait to find a mentor. You don't have to wait to, have the next promotion or whatever it is. You can invest in yourself. And the guy I was just on the phone with, he goes, I want to take this to my EVP. He goes, and he's going to be skeptical. And isn't that funny though, that we're like, you go through the science, you put everything out there, and the proposal is, if we can help the team improve sleep, we're probably going to improve revenue. We're going to improve performance. They're going to have better lives. We're going to churn less. And that seems funny to us, even though when you spend some time with it, it shouldn't be. So I think your point is a really good one. It's within our control.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and I think hopefully that if those listening either on the recording or live here, people might be like, okay, what does sleep have to do with leadership? But I think a lot, and you totally proved that. And so thanks so much for coming on today, Nick, and talking about it. So I guess this part maybe wasn't clear. Do we start if we want to download the app? Is it a free app, or is it mainly just for the sales teams right now?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So first of all, I'll follow up with a couple of links. I know some people are asking for some information. I'd be more than happy to follow with some links, some information to focus in on. The second thing is you can go grab the app in the App Store or the Google Play Store. So it's available. The way that we do it there is basically it's a 7-day trial. You can do a 7-day free trial. And when you do that, you can make a decision as to whether this is working for you, whether it's designed for you, and continue with it after that. And then if anybody has any issues with payment on that, if that's a barrier, just get in touch with me and I'll make sure. I don't want payment or finances right now to stand in the way of somebody getting better sleep.
Well, this is so cool, and thanks for teaching us so much here just in 30 minutes about such an important topic that in your market, your addressable market is massive too, right? Every human has to sleep, so.
It is a big addressable market, that's for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'll grab any links if you want to follow up that I'll put in our show notes, and I'm sure Nick's willing to share an email too. Follow him on Twitter at Nick Seguin, Seguin. And gosh, thanks for the time, man. It's really great to catch up.
Yep. And I'm just nick@risescience.com. So if anybody wants to email me or I can be helpful, just shoot me an email. I'm more than happy.
All right. This is fun. All right. I'll let you go start your wind down process, and you have a great night, man. Take care.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right. So that's it for this week's Leadmore Live. I hope you guys enjoyed our time here with Nick. I thought that was fascinating. So Stacy, two Stacys, good to see you. Ryan, other Nick, Gary, thanks for being here. We'll post this call back in the community. And we'll see you all, of course, next week for next week's Leadmore Live. Take care.